Hello, everyone. My name is Dinkar Sharma, and I work as a technical marketing engineer in Cisco Secure Technical Alliance team based in RTP, Raleigh, North Carolina. In today's presentation, we will talk about Cisco Secure Firewall, which is also known as Firepower Threat Defense or Cisco NGFW, or sometimes even simply Firepower. We will briefly cover different security policies such as access control, security intelligence, secure IPS, anti-malware protection policy, TrustSec, Tls Decryption policies that brings together various security controls and protect your network against various threats. We will also briefly cover other key features like network discovery policy, indication of compromise events, Cisco Threat Intelligence Director, and Securex that brings additional threat intelligence, facilitates correlation of various security events, unifies visibility, and maximizes operational efficiency by expediting threat hunting. We will call it a day with two lab demo sessions. Demo 1 will be Cisco Secure Firewall Policy and Dashboard Walkthrough. I will also briefly demo Cisco's extended detection and response solution, which is called Securex. Demo 2 will be a Cisco Secure Firewall security control validation using AttackIQ, which will be delivered by Cory Sutliff from AttackIQ. Let's move on to the next one. So the question is, why Cisco Secure Firewall? The Cisco Secure Firewall provides world-class security controls that delivers great protections for your network against an increasingly evolving and complex set of threats and threat actors. Cisco Firewall offers 3 times the performance boost over various previous generations of appliances, unique hardware-based capabilities for inspecting encrypted traffic at scale, and human-readable SNOT 3 rules in the IPS policies that helps in simplifying security policies. Dynamic application visibility and control is available through Cisco Secure Workload Integration for consistent protection for a lot of modern applications across the network and the workloads either on your private cloud or public cloud. Cisco Firewall offers a variety of management options that streamlines security policy and device management across your extended network and accelerate key security operations. In Cisco, we offer 3 different platforms. The first one is called Firepower Device Manager, which is an on-box manager. Second one is a cloud solution, which is known as Cisco Defense Orchestrator. And the third one is most known as Firepower Management Center, which is our mostly used management solution. It could either be an appliance or a physical or a virtual box that can be used to manage firewalls. We also integrate with a lot of other Cisco and third-party solutions across network, cloud, email, internet, and various endpoints that provides you with a broad and deep portfolio of security products. All of these working together, to correlate multiple security events and assist in eliminating noise and stop threats faster. So let's talk about the firewall policy components. The first one is access control policy. We have a variety of controls that ensure efficient security layer as well as enforce acceptable use policy. Our primary access control policy includes inspection and control from layer 4 to layer 7 and can be configured to pull feeds from Tls, which is our threat intelligence organization, in the form of security intelligence. This feed from Tls allows the firewall to intelligently block or allow flows based on different observables, which includes IPv4, IPv6, URLs, domain names, and fully qualified lists, fully qualified domain names. Application control is also a critical requirement. So our application visibility control engine and Open App ID can easily meet your application control needs along with our over 4,000 predefined apps. URL and DNS, URL categories and DNS layer brings another security control. Again, the feed from Cisco Tls Intelligence can be used by administrators where they can define different reputation and category-based access control rules for DNS and web traffic. Combining all these controls within the access control policy definition provides a superior defense in depth in terms of layer of security. So a critical part to improving the scoping of threats, threat events based on their impact or in automating the security configuration is detecting the state of the host on your network. Basically profiling your end hosts, profiling your endpoints. Our network discovery policy is what gives you that power and visibility. With the help of network discovery, we dynamically create host profiles of the devices seen in the network. This is done without any software and any type of agent installed at the endpoint, and it is actively done through by inspecting the traffic and categorizing the flows to create this corpus of data. Some of the elements that we capture about the host or the assets on the network and build a host profile are IP address, operating system, application, server services, protocols, and different types of vulnerabilities, which those operating systems or applications might be affected to. All these elements or attributes provide quick intelligence on indication of compromises seen against a host and influence our security policy design in general. The next important component is secure IPS, or in general an IPS policy. Cisco's IPS policy provides intelligence based on open source IPS solution known as SNOT. We support both SNOT 2 and SNOT 3 capabilities. We prioritize the security events generated by an IPS policy by impact flags. These are the buckets of categories that segments alerts by their potential impact. In any SOC environment, the administrators would like to first investigate and remediate alerts that have high impact and greatly reduce the burden of overloaded IPS events. We can also tune IPS signatures to meet the environment. With the help of automated recommendation feature, the device can list down various signatures that should be in place to have the highest protection while reducing the number of rules that will never trigger in general and possibly be bringing false positives. This also allows the administrator to tune the IPS signatures with ease and reduce the rule set to improve performance and reduce any type of noise in the form of false positives. As I mentioned, we support both SNOT 3 and SNOT 2 and SNOT 3. We actually started supporting SNOT 3 from Firewall version 7.1 onwards, and it's officially launched and is being used by our customers. It's a sweeping upgrade which features improvements and new capabilities, resulting in enhanced performance, fast processing, improved scalability for your network, and with a range of 200 plus plugins which the administrators can use to create custom setup or custom signatures or policies for their networks. The next important element is indication of compromise events. These are behavioral traits that something is wrong or questionable in your network, and that needs to be looked into. These IOCs can be signals from escalation of privilege, communications to the command and control servers, fingerprinting that shows commonality to exploit kits or compromises. Cisco's Firewall Management Center, which is our management solution, makes it very easy to observe and interact with these IOC events, and they are derived from various type of security events, which would include security intelligence, IPS, and malware, or even in general connection events. These IOCs, or indication of compromise events, they can also facilitate remediation. Firewall can also be set up to take automated actions. This drives down the time to detect and response, which is the end goal of security. These can be simple type of actions such as blocking a specific connection or blocking a particular host or hosts, or even for a deeper pervasive approach, Cisco's rapid threat containment solution can be used to automatically remove these endpoints. An example of Cisco's rapid threat containment solution or use case would be, using FMC and ICE, Firepower Management Center, and Cisco's Identity Service Engine solution. Cisco ICE is a network access control, enforcer in your network, with the ability for the FMC to quarantine endpoints using that ICE. So whenever Firepower Management Center generate or receives various types of events which indicates that something is wrong with a host, with a particular host or host in your network, based on indication of compromise events or IPS events or malware events, ICE could be contacted via an API call by FMC to to kick the user off the network or change the context of the user and the endpoint so that the different actions are taken within the network infrastructure. Next, we have AMP policy, anti-malware protection policy, or in simple, it can also be called a file policy. Cisco's AMP solution is the industry's leading malware protection solution. With a database over 500 million known files and over 1.5 million new incoming file samples every day, AMP provides not only global threat protection but also extensive visibility during and after a malware attack. With AMP, a world-class malware database is paired with context-aware monitoring along with retrospective malware analysis and a threat grid sandboxing server that provides an anti-malware solution. All this is done through various telemetry streams that includes metadata fingerprinting, understanding the file and the network input output, uncovering what processes are being called or exploited, and understand what has been gleaned from secure malware analytics intelligence. Secure malware analytics, or in general SMA, is our sandboxing environment, which was also formerly known as threat grid. The deep analytic engine within the threat grid further executes the file in a bare metal environment, sandbox environment, and the data is compared against global security intelligence as well as correlation of rules or policies with the specific customer based activities to form decision against those files. Next, we have TrustSec. Cisco's TrustSec allows the segmentation of your network. It's a highly scalable and agile technology that allows the association of network devices to be categorized into different groups or tags, or sometimes or simply known as SGTs or secure group tags. This deep intelligence of the attached devices can be used to control traffic. Again, Cisco ICE, which is our network access control technology, is the product behind orchestrating these behavioral controls, creating and maintaining consistent policies across your IT environment, and is supported by a lot of Cisco security, or in general, the enterprise networking products as well. With respect to firewall, TrustSec allows us to micro-segment the network and assign memberships to those segments. For example, redirecting a device to quarantine for further enforcement, which if is found communicating to a command and control servers by the IOC events in firewall. Next, we have TLS decryption. We all know with today's networks becoming more and more blind to ever increasing percentage of encrypted traffic, we can no longer take it for granted. We need SSL decryption not only to tackle these encrypted threats, malicious API calls, but also to perform access control on micro applications. For example, an enterprise might allow Facebook for marketing purpose, but they might not want to allow the other micro applications within Facebook, which includes either Facebook video or Facebook games. So Cisco next generation firewall hardware greatly reduces the performance impact caused by the SSL decryption, man in the middle task. They can enforce access control on TLS version, cipher strength, and the type of certificate which is being used for TLS communication. If there is a need that we don't need to decrypt TLS traffic, or we don't want to decrypt TLS traffic, for example, TLS 1.3 brings a lot of challenges with respect to decryption. There are no worries. We can configure access control policies to evaluate URL and application control conditions when a client connects to a TLS 1.3 based server. Our TLS server identity discovery feature enable these conditions to be evaluated without decrypting the traffic. So all these various controls, whether you need TLS decryption or without TLS decryption for TLS 1.3, allows our customers to enforce granular policies for TLS traffic inspection and provide detailed tracking and logging capabilities for TLS sessions. Next, we have Cisco Threat Intelligence Director. So many of the customers, they have invested in their own threat intelligence feed solutions, which are used to extend the intelligence that derives the threat protection layer. Cisco Threat Intelligence Director gives us an open environment that will take all these feeds, parse the data down into usable observables or indicators, and then feed them into Firewall for access control, rule creation, or design your security policies accordingly. Sticks and taxi are the well-defined standards behind this functionality that direct how information is packaged and delivered. Some examples that may use this functionality are the feeds from third-party solutions like ThreatIQ, Infoblox, Alien Vault, Cyware, and there are many others as well. Securex. So Securex is Cisco's cloud native solution for extended detection and response, in short XDR. It's an XDR platform that provides unified visibility across all parts of Cisco or third-party security portfolio. The primary goal is to correlate all the security events and provide a centralized incident detection and response capabilities with comprehensive monitoring across the entire attack surface. It maximizes operational efficiency with automated workflows that reduce threat hunting time and manual tasks to stay compliant and counter attacks. Cisco Secure Firewall, or FTD, can also be integrated in Securex platform that automates workflows to improve the operational efficiencies. I'll be briefly, giving a demo about Securex as well, which is coming in the next section. Last, we have security events. So, based on all the threat intelligence feed and the intelligence firewall puts together to implement those access control rules or enforce different security controls in your network, it generates a lot of security events as well. Well, primarily, there are 5 or 6 type of events, including connection events, file events, intrusion prevention events, malware events. All these security events and information can be leveraged by a lot of CM solution, which is security information and event management solutions like Splunk, QRadar, or ArcSight, which can expedite your incident response and threat hunting process. So with Splunk and QRadar and ArcSight, we do have this Firepower app which can receive events from your firewall in the form of syslog or eStreamer and provide you with a nice dashboard, which just like the firewall management center, which can be leveraged by either the SOC operation teams or the incident response team for for threat analysis and threat hunting. All right, I'll be moving on to the demo part 1, which will be a walkthrough of Firepower Management Center policy and dashboard walkthrough. Okay, so this is the Cisco Firepower Management Center, which is one of our one and the mostly used management solution for firewall management. And it can be a physical appliance or a virtual appliance. For example, this one is a virtual FMC installed on a VMware. And as you can see, this is the default screen which the user gets, and we have a lot of predefined dashboard widgets which are based on different types of telemetry the Firepower Management Center receives from the firewalls in terms of security events, or as a part of the Nmap or the network discovery policy scan it runs. So we have different dashboards depending upon the category. So under network, we have a lot of application URL business relevant categories which can provide you details. And then under threat, we have all the IPS related data and file inspection related information. For example, this graph shows different types of security IPS events received from the firewall based on the impact flag. And then we also display a list of different types of files seen in the network and possibly detected as malware threats in the network. So yeah, similarly, we have intrusion events, which includes intrusion events depending upon different categories. It could be application protocol, source IP, the top destination targets, and all these helps with respect to finding out those indication of compromises. So speaking of indication of compromises, so if we go to so analysis connection, we have events, which is in general the flows connection events, and then we have security intelligence events, which are generated based on the threat feed received from Cisco's Tls we spoke about. So if I quickly go ahead and select the time since last 1 week and click on apply. Okay, so these are the blocks, either IP block for different types of categories which have been implemented by based on the threat feed we receive from security intelligence. And security intelligence events can also be contributing to the indication of compromise. So we have connection events, we have security intelligence events, and then we have intrusion events. And then if we go under hosts and click on indicator of compromise, this is where we see all of the IOC events, and these events are based on the different types of security events we have received. For example, if there is if an intrusion event was, so for this host we saw an intrusion event, and then similarly for the same host we saw a security intelligence event, which means something bad is happening with this a specific host, and this definitely is eligible for an entity which is related to indication of compromised host. So these are different types of security events we spoke about. And before I move on to policy, so different policy components, I would like to talk to and show you the network discovery policy we were talking about. So the network discovery policy is the one which learns about different types of hosts and profiles the host in your network. And this is done through an Nmap scan performed by the Firewall Management Center. And this is where you can define what type of networks you would like to scan and build a host profile data for. It could be based on different types of zones you have configured in Firewall Management Center, including different types of networks. And what is it you would like to monitor? For example, hosts, which would include the operating system and other attribute information. users, which will include, I believe, LDAP data and all of the um, information, username and password information exchanged through different protocols like FTP, SMTP, and then various types of application. So, and of course, you can define, you can include an exclude list if you want, if there is something you would not like to be a part of this scan. So yeah, this is what builds the host profile. And if we go to hosts and host analysis, host, and yep, this is what the network discovery policy does. It learns about, it builds a profile of different hosts in your network, and gives you that context for policy creation. All right, so for security policies, we have so our primary policy is access control policy, and this is where we define all of our access rules along with other security policies. So for example, this is where we define the SSL decryption policy, and then within an access rule we have, if we edit and we go to inspection, we have our IPS policy. So IPS policy and file policy can be per rule basis. So this is where we define our secure IPS or malware policy or AMP policy. And then definitely we have different types of controls based on applications, URLs, which can be defined even along with identity information, whether we would like to block a particular group of users or a specific user. And then at the global level, we have security intelligence. So we can either block connections based on IP address, or domain names and URLs, based on their categories. And Cisco Talos is the team which works on building these categories, and this threat feed is downloaded from Talos, like every, based on the configuration parameters, every 2 hours, every 24 hours, whatever you have configured. All right, so this is these are the different policy components, and the security events of Firewall Management Center. I just would like to give a brief overview of our Securex platform, which is our cloud-based extended detection and response solution. So Firewall Management Center can also be integrated with Securex, and what it does is it receives all the um, security events via API calls between FMC and itself, and gives you this nice dashboard, a unified visibility. So this can not only be for firewall. So for example, if you have other Cisco security solutions or third-party firewalls which you have integrated with Securex, will give you a one place visibility, one location where all of the security events can be received and analyzed. So for example, if we have to investigate, um, Securex receive all of those events, and it can give you the capability of analyzing those events. So for example, let's say if we have this host, by the way, if we only send security impact level 1 and impact level 2 events, and we automatically promote them to an incident. But if there is something which has not been flagged by Securex, you can definitely go ahead and manually categorize into as an incident and then start investigating it. So for example, let's say we suspect something is wrong with this source IP or IP address. We can click here and promote it into an incident. And if we go back to Securex, there is a small ribbon down here, which can actually help you to analyze uh, or access the incident response book directly from that ribbon itself. So if we go here and so yeah, if we go here and we just click on investigate incident. Okay, so let's select all. No, let's just go for one. Let's just take 25, which was earlier there, and click on investigate threat intelligence. So Cisco Securex can also be integrated with a lot of other third-party intelligence, threat intelligence feed, which can be used and receive that information, and then it can be investigated right here. And it gives you a nice, UI form in terms of, it gives you a nice UI look in terms of the investigation it has done, and that can be taken further for the investigation. All right, I'll just stop it here. Just a quick overview of the Cisco Firepower Splunk app. So this is Splunk and the Firepower Splunk app installed on Ubuntu-based Splunk. And this app is receiving security events in the form of syslog or eStreamer from Firewall and the Firepower Management Center. And it gives you a nice dashboard look, just like Firewall Management Center, which can be used for security, incident analysis, and threat hunting. All right, now I will be handing over to Eric from Cisco, who will be walking us through Cisco's anti-malware protection solution, which is known as Cisco Secure Endpoint. Over to you, Eric. Thank you.
Thank you, Dinkar. Hello to everyone. I'm Eric Howard. I lead the Secure Endpoint technical marketing team inside of Cisco Security. And I'm going to talk about Cisco Secure Endpoint, some of the capabilities that it delivers and provides, and talk about how we've partnered with AttackIQ to deliver some security efficacy testing and the ability for our customers to prove value in Cisco Secure Endpoint by using AttackIQ for breach and attack simulation. So when we talk about secure endpoint, we're actually trying to redefine how it's been understood from a Cisco perspective. There are several security products from Cisco that have worked on the endpoint for some time. Of course, there's AnyConnect, which is more than just a VPN tool. There is Secure Endpoint, formerly known as AMP for Endpoints, which addresses malware and problems in the same space as malware. So any kind of issues related to bad files, behavior issues, or instances on an endpoint that needs to be adjusted, corrected, or prevented. And then there are other security technologies that work at the endpoint to bring insight and efficacy also. There are tools such as Orbital, which is our ability to hunt across our managed fleet of systems so that we can either hunt for threats, indication of compromise, investigation, or to help build in necessary context for response. Of course, tools like Umbrella and Duo also aid at endpoint prevention and providing security. So when we talk about secure endpoint, we're actually looking at what we would deem a full stack of capabilities that need to be delivered at the endpoint. And the stack of capabilities that include everything from VPN type technologies, the ability to assess posture, of course, looking for malware and things related to malware. But all of these particular technology and capabilities should produce outcomes for a customer, one of which you've heard Dinkar mention already, which is called XDR. XDR, Extended Detection and Response, is the blend of both network and endpoint detection and response capabilities that, when delivered, should help drive response faster than ever before by being able to have good, broad, contextual insight into what an attacker has actually done inside of your environment. EPP, or endpoint protection, and EDR is of course a key driver for the endpoint capabilities that we deliver. Zero Trust and SASE are other deployment models or security architecture where secure endpoint becomes a key component of the modern security stack. And so there is a modern security stack for the endpoint itself, but then there's a modern security stack across your organization that reaches into deployment methodologies and security architectures, as I've mentioned, such as XDR, Zero Trust, SASE, or a more standard and direct EPP, EDR implementation that might be needed. Here's why I love the endpoint. In my estimation, the endpoint is the last line of defense. It sounds a little bit like maybe Star Wars or Star Trek, but I tend to say that it's the last best hope to secure the assets that your users use to do their daily work. As Dinkar mentioned, the networks are going dim with encrypted traffic, and there's some traffic you may not be able to break apart to gain inspection across the network layer. With the spread and proliferation of cloud accessed business systems, we still need to have visibility on the devices used to access key corporate data. And at the end of the day, the endpoint is where the attackers are targeting. They need to have a system to land their attacks on. They need to have a system to pivot on. They need to have a system that allows them to gain access to the data that matters to them so that they can then gain their net effect at the end of the day. And so the endpoint itself is still the last line of defense for any network. And the endpoints that I'm talking about, these could be Windows clients or servers. It could be Linux and Mac, iOS or Android devices. These operational endpoints that we must secure do not exist in isolation. What we look at is the endpoint and having many capabilities and how it should feed into modern security stack. Let's take a moment and dig in on what those capabilities should provide. Of course, there needs to be some sense of file reputation. There needs to be the ability to look at an endpoint, whether it is on our network or off of our network, and see what systems it's been reaching out to talk to, what are the network flows that we can see and correlate against. Being able to provide system process protection, which means that I have the ability to prevent attackers from abusing trusted system processes to gain things like privilege escalation or to pull down user information. And so while there is this notion of front-end prevention, again, that includes things like exploit prevention, where I can protect against trusted and key business applications, of course, ransomware protection, but not everything can be prevented. And I think that's a key thing we've got to understand if we're going to do security well. Nothing is 100% when it comes to prevention. If you are backed by good detection, we should be able to then use what we can see, such as what are the indications of compromise that have triggered? What's most prevalent or least prevalent in my environment? Is there some new file that's been introduced that's never been seen before? It's the first time we've seen that. Is it a true 0 day that we need to be able to gain insight into because we can see it's new, it's low in prevalence, and we don't have much insight into execution behavior? We're able to map things like vulnerability surfaces, and so that we can see if tools such as Kenna, our risk-based vulnerability tool, can relate to us operating system vulnerabilities that might make us more exposed or give us a higher level of risk that causes us to determine how we respond, and maybe we point our response at systems that actually present themselves with higher risk on the network. Orbital is our advanced search tool that enables our users to do threat hunting on their own using observables like file hashes or IP addresses or domains or URLs. You can hunt through your managed fleet of systems and gain insight to systems that have made recent DNS queries to a particular domain of concern. You can see what's running in a process table on a system at that moment in time. So it's a great way to get a quick snapshot into what's running on any host in the environment. Thirdly, the third tier of solid endpoint security is the ability to respond. For us, response takes a few turns here. One is the ability to provide what we call retrospective security. Retrospective security means that we are watching all of the points you've seen in the blue and purple here, so that if we ever change our mind about the disposition of a file, about a particular point of behavior, about a particular IP address or domain we've seen a system either initiate or receive a connection from, then we can use the log of that data. We grab system telemetry, and you'll see this in just a moment, without regard to disposition. Because if we ever change our mind, we need to be able to inform our customers that we've done so. There may be a true 0-day that makes it onto a host. We need to log where it's been, what it's done, how it's interacted with other system processes, what it's executed, and how it's executed. So that, again, if we change our mind, we can reach back, as it were, in time to quarantine that binary, shut that file down, remove that PDF or Word doc or whatever it might be, so that you have the ability to, again, respond faster than ever before. Response also includes things like endpoint isolation, where we can essentially lock a host into an isolated point where it can only talk to our cloud for threat intelligence and insight, but also can be used. You can also use tools like Orbital to interrogate that system in real time, but it is not allowed to talk to any other systems that you may not have expressly allowed as a part of policy. Automated actions, an orchestrator, cross-platform response. These are initiated both inside of Secure Endpoint and as a part of its connection to Securex. Every Cisco security product comes Securex enabled. That means that if you choose to try out or test or purchase Cisco Secure Endpoint, you have access to Securex included. And that means all of the integrations that Dinkar has mentioned that happen via Securex can be triggered via events that have started in Endpoint. So here's how you tell that story. We take all of the Cisco security products, be they firewall, endpoint, ISRs, our web appliances, our email, be it cloud or appliance, Cisco umbrella. All of these reference one threat intelligence cloud backed by Talos, which is our threat research organization. There are tools that do malware analytics or some sandboxing on steroids, if you will, that allow us to really bolster what we make available across all of the security products. So earlier I said the endpoint cannot operate in isolation. The endpoints that we manage are not in isolation, and security can't be done in isolation. This is what that means. Context needs to be brought to bear on two factors, both on the ability to see broadly what has happened across an organization, but then very deeply when I need to pivot into a specific product. So if I am focused on firewall, what are the specifics that firewall exposes for me? And I use the console there to do so. But if I need to, I have the ability to pivot quickly to a tool like Secure Endpoint, so that inside of Secure Endpoint, I can grab insight and detail that a firewall does not open up for me. Things like file location on disk, things like what user context was an executable run under, things like what command lines do we see trapped in execution states of systems. And so being able to quickly see down to the actual control point itself, what we are able to add gives context. We cannot operate in isolation. To bring this even further, Dinkar mentioned XDR. And I said XDR is the combination of both network detection and response and endpoint detection and response. The goal of XDR is to make sure you get visibility and control across all of your attack vectors and can respond faster than ever before. We used to call this see once, block everywhere. We used to call it AMP everywhere. But this was the ability to quickly gain protection across the entire platform, no matter what the interdiction tool might be, endpoint or firewall or secure email, but also now use those tools to gain contextual awareness of what happened in the view of that tool itself. Here's how we make that work. Securex enables XDR for us. Built into Securex is tooling, things like, we call it a ribbon. Notice on your screen now, the little blue shaded area. That is a web tool that follows you across all of the Cisco secure products. It remains context sensitive to the environment you're working in, but it also brings together anything you've created, such as casebooks, which can be a place to quickly gather insight as you're building context to respond, to know what observables matter to an incident or an occurrence. It also allows you to do some sharing with other analysts where you're working on a casebook together and teaming on a particular incident as you respond. Also, orchestration is a tool of Securex, whereby we can take the manual tasks of response after we've done our investigative work. We can take those manual tasks and submit them for automation. Things like go get a forensic snapshot from the endpoint. What does that mean? That means that I don't have to deploy tools out to an endpoint that might be at the far end of a slow internet connection, or potentially even very busy, and I can't get what I need out of the system because I can't pull back a memory dump or a disk image because it's too large and will bog down that system itself. Forensic snapshots are able to quickly grab a view of what's live and running on a system at a point in time so that I can see posture on any system in relation to an event. Now, these tools that come inside of Securex are built to do two things for you. It is to give you enriched insight and to give you faster response. I think that's a theme that you're probably picking up on right now. Faster response is the key to any tooling that we're going to provide, and Secure Endpoint enables that by its connection to Securex. This is a dashboard of Secure Endpoint. And this will be the point where now I'll pivot to actually showing you the product, clicking through some things, and you'll see how the product works. And then after, you'll get a demo of how these things come together to work with AttackIQ in particular. What we've done before I move to the demo is that we've partnered with AttackIQ on the Secure Endpoint proof of concept or proof of value side, where prospects who would like to try out Secure Endpoint but don't know how to best go into efficacy testing, they don't want to fool with downloading malware and having to host that and deal with all of the work that might come to make sure their environments are protected. We provide customers a virtual environment, a Windows device, and access to AttackIQ's template of Windows assessments that can be run against any standard Windows system, whereby all you have to do is double click, run an assessment button, and AttackIQ goes in the background of dropping malware, trying to exploit running applications, bringing down ransomware, and a whole host of things that are in AttackIQ's template library, so that then we can expose to our customers what they get to see from Secure Endpoint's console as a point of proof of technology or proof of concept or value. With that said, let me get into showing you Secure Endpoint at work right now. This is our Secure Endpoint console. I'm logged into what we call an overview page. It allows you to see what looks like a typical kind of AV style dashboard. I'm able to see what we call compromised systems or compromises in our environment, get you down to what we call the root cause of the threat. These would be the entry point of any particular threat we've noted on a system. We're even giving you insight into some of the data we're tracking on each particular system. We've got vulnerability insight. We've got a breakdown of the computer spread. So what are the operating systems that we're protecting, on and on. Typical antivirus style view. But if I pivot into what we call our inbox, it allows us to now get to work. I've got a list of systems here. Some of these are demo systems. They're in my demo environment. But I'm going to go right into one I've already pulled in to what we call in progress. I've said this is something I'm working on. I don't want anyone to, intrude on my work on this particular system. When I pull this system up, I have the ability to see now what's going on with this particular host. When I pull this system up, I've got the ability now to see a few things about what's going on with this host. I've got operating system. I know the connector version running. I know when it was installed and when it last checked in. But I also now have the list of threats that we've detected or behavior patterns that have risen that we would call a compromise. You'll notice here PowerShell called out as an issue on this particular host. PowerShell is a trusted application. I can't go quarantine that. It's used by almost every system administrator in the world. But I can observe behavior kicked off and connected to PowerShell that is problematic. Now, if there's enough here with what I see, I can begin to take action. I can go and view a snapshot that may have already been taken for me so that I can see what's the posture of this particular host in relation to the threat event that's been called to mind. What does that mean? That means I see what is in auto exec. I am able to see what ports are open and what applications are tied to those open ports. I can see what, if any, drives are mapped. I have the full PowerShell history of this host. I'm able to see the full text of the scripts that are executed by PowerShell. I know what's set to stage to run faster because it's in the prefetch. I know what scheduled tasks have been built on a particular system. I know what's in startup. There's a whole host of data here that can be used to gain insight into what's real on this particular system at this state and time. I talked about isolation. If I want to, I can begin to kick off isolation of this host so that when isolation begins, this host can't talk to anything but my security cloud and any other particular tools that I've allowed it to talk to. Now, there's more data behind this, and so we'll just choose one of these events to drill in. This is a view that we call device trajectory. I mentioned earlier that Cisco Secure Endpoint does not track just malicious activity. It tracks all system behavior. What that means is from the time you install the security connector until you are logged into the console looking at a particular slice of time, we have insight into what happened. You'll notice on the y-axis, there are running processes and files that will be noted here. And then along the X line, you'll see how they connect together, what executed what. And so for this particular event that called out, I see that something launched a Tor connection. And while it may not be malicious necessarily, this might be something that we do not allow inside of our organization or environment. I have now at hand, of course, the event itself. I have the executable run that was used to make this Tor connection. I have some mappings to MITRE that apply to what we're seeing, but I also have the ability to build in response. Right here in the system, I can take that Tor executable and I can add it to what we call a custom detection. That blocks this thing from running. It will quarantine it from its place on disk, not just for this host, but for every system that ever sees this executable. It prevents it from future downloads and removes it from any place it already exists. This view is again called device trajectory. It gives me a legend, a way to see what happened again from the moment we install the connector, so I can slide back in time. I can look at any previous events that may have occurred and see what's been logged. The thing with MITRE attack techniques and tactics that get pinned to this is that now it gives me insight into attacker progression. So I know how they're moving through their attack chain, but I also see attacker intention. What is it that they hope to do? What is their point of success? And if they are successful, what does that mean for me as an analyst so that I can, again, hopefully respond faster? If I know their behavior, I may have the advantage now to be able to respond faster than I have before. So I have the ability to hunt through this data on my own. I can search through device trajectory for observables that would be common, such as file hashes, IP addresses, URLs, domain names, etc. But there's one other thing that I would like to talk to, and it's the fact that we take all the telemetry data you saw and we actually hunt for you. And so secure endpoint customers that come in at what we call Premier have for them a team of threat hunters that are looking through their telemetry data for them with hypothesis in mind to understand how, again, are attackers progressing through network environments, what tooling are they using, and what are their techniques to accomplish the tactics that they're carrying forward. With those hypotheses in mind, we inspect large data sets. As you saw, there's a lot of data in device trajectory, lots of telemetry. Imagine doing this at scale for thousands of hosts that you manage. Our threat hunters do this for you. And as they continue to press through their hunt strategy, what it does is it ends up presenting key high fidelity events that we say you should start with. So if you're going to start anywhere, you're going to start with Securex threat hunting events. This is what a threat hunting event brings to bear for us. One, when did the incident start? What's the first thing we saw that matched on our hypothesis timeline? When did we discover it? Meaning, what's the last thing we saw that closed the door and said, yep, that's a real incident, and we need to tell our customers about that? Again, MITRE tactics and techniques from the attack framework that help to understand intention and progression of attackers, but also a summary. What do we recommend? What do we first tell you that happened on this host? We see that a malicious Word doc came in from a phishing email. And we know that because the endpoint gives us insight like, where was this file on disk? And we get to see that this was opened by a Word, by Microsoft Word. So I see the connection points that only come from an endpoint. I observe behavior. So I see the Word document drop to VBS scripts. A scheduled task was created that uses a trusted application. I mentioned PowerShell earlier, something we cannot block. I can't remove certutil.exe from your Windows host, but I can observe its behavior for unusual things. I can see where it's co-opted into bad behavior. I can watch for execution of those dropped scripts and other behavior points that we're able to log because, again, we watch without regard to disposition. Secondly, what can you do? Well, there's some remediation steps. I've talked about some of these already. Isolation. We can knock that host off the network so that it doesn't get to talk to anyone else and begin to try to reduce proliferation of the threat itself. Forensics investigation, forensic snapshots leads to that so that I have insight into what's happening with users and other activities on that particular host. And then based upon the threat type itself, and this is probably the way most of us go who do security, we're probably going to grab that system and re-image it, take it off the network and give our users something else to use so that they can get back to productivity. If ever needed, Cisco Talos has incident response services that are available, and they can actually jump into any incident or event of any type and help to walk back from that, again, hopefully faster than ever, because they have data such as this. Now, I'm going to juxtapose this data with what you just saw a moment ago. You saw lots of data in device trajectory. You saw lots of unknown processes. You saw lines connecting to other lines. And there's data there that can be used to hunt on your own. But if our threat hunters have uncovered something for you, they take all of that telemetry and bring to this timeline the key system, the key events on this system that match to that summary we just read through. Right. So now we've got WinWord executing. So that means that I got a Word document coming up. I see VBS scripts being dropped on this host. I can see now a scheduled task created that calls certutil at some later time. So I'm now seeing things like the dropper. I see execution. I see persistence, and on and on and on through the timeline. Again, if I need to, I can take the context provided and take action. Just as you saw me pivot to go through and take action for a simple custom detection, blocking on that Tor executable. I can do that for any file of concern, and I can drop that quickly into a block list or quarantine list. If I want to extend this even further and use the power of Securex, now I have the ability to do other things outside of the endpoint. I have the ability to talk to other systems. I have the ability to investigate inside of Securex to see what threat response would show me, and particularly maybe even take actions with some of the other tools that Doug and Dinkar have built integrations with that are not inside of the Cisco ecosystem itself. So that's been a view of Cisco Secure Endpoint and how it enables response, hopefully faster than ever before. You can stop by cisco.com and check out videos and recordings that show even how we use AttackIQ as a part of testing out technology and giving good security efficacy and insight to our customers.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric, Doug, and Dinkar for all your presentation, all your information today on Cisco and the various ways they're implementing the threat-informed defense approach and really utilizing the MITRE ATT&CK and other various methodologies to quickly and easily help defenders and blue teams identify those risks. So again, my name is Cory Sutliff with AttackIQ, and thanks for your time and attention today. Everyone have a great session.